Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be doing as you can see, quick summary on keeping your remote office secure today. We wanted to focus on this because we've kind of touched on the collaboration and different tools that everyone can use now that we're all working from home, but we haven't touched on security yet, and that's probably first and foremost of things we have to worry about now that everyone's working environment has changed. So like the other webinars here, I'll have Mel helping me out, taking questions. Say hi, Mel.
Hello, everybody. Hello. As far as questions go, just when you think of it, pop it into the question box and we'll answer them when it makes sense to answer.
Okay. So a little bit about us before we get started. We're a local managed service provider. We've been in the DC metro area for 35 years now. Offer 24/7 IT management and support. And we also help you manage and maintain Office 365 and Teams for those who are using it. We offer cloud workspace and cloud infrastructure using Microsoft Azure. We can help your company move completely into the cloud or just some servers if you need to. We also focus on network security and security training for your users. So that would take the form of a firewall, antivirus, helping you with security procedures. And then the other side of it would be maybe providing some testing in the form of, a common one is in the form of email spoofing campaigns. So we send harmless email spoofs, or spam, I'm sorry, to try to trick the users basically. And then we get a report back on who does and who doesn't, and we can use that to help train your users and secure your network through procedure. We also offer business voice and wireless for your office, and we're a member of TAG, which is a nationwide group of hundreds of other small businesses like ourselves that we can reach out to for industry knowledge and for help. So, for example, if you have an office in the DC area and you're looking to maybe open a branch on the West Coast or wherever, you can work with another company that you know has our trust and will provide our same level of service wherever you are. So, is your remote office secure? Champ, the Comtech mascot, is always very concerned as usual.
Hey, Mike, we do need to I did interrupt to remind you that it is Champ's birthday today. He is now 1 year old.
Oh, shoot, I forgot to get him a birthday present.
Yep.
I forgot totally about that. I was even reminded this morning. So again, is your office secure? A lot of times, because we're coming back home and working in an environment we're very familiar with and we have control over, it's not necessarily top of mind. But we wanted to help everyone get to thinking about things that are still an issue and a concern, and things that are maybe new concerns now that everyone is working from home. So I wanted to start with the network, your home network, which of course is totally separate from what you're doing at the office, or was totally separate, and now they're kind of intermingling. So I wanted to start with what could happen. Let's talk about the bad side of the story, so to speak. We all know that computer viruses are a major issue. That's problem number one, viruses on your PC. And when somebody says virus, it a lot of times doesn't really give a good enough explanation. There's lots of different types. Two of the big ones are CryptoLocker. So they download a program on the computer which will encrypt permanently all of the files on your PC, sometimes to the point of stopping it from working at all. You've lost the entire computer. Another particularly dangerous one is a keylogger. So that's where the program is put on your computer, it's run silently, you have no idea it's there, and it's tracking everything that you're putting into the computer. Mouse clicks, keyboard strokes, everything. So it doesn't matter what you're working in, if you're in a secure web page or not, it still is recording everything you're typing. We obviously don't want that. Second one is, do you know who's using your network? You could have somebody logged into your Wi-Fi, or maybe there's a device that you're not aware of that's connected to your home network. On one side, stealing your bandwidth, so you're not getting your money's worth, you're not getting what you're paying for, or possibly using that point to steal data from your network as well. Again, all things that we don't want. Last thing is that we all know about is passwords and login security. So I wanted to put that here in this slide because it's a concern for whether you're at work or at home, but some people have been getting a little bit lax with it just because of the change in environment. So the big concern here is, are you using unique passwords? If one password is compromised, then that means that almost, whatever percentage you've, say, used the same email and password for of websites or logins, whether it's banking or e-commerce or what have you, medical records, if you repeat the same password and login, you have a major security risk. So how do we deal with these three things? First one is pretty simple. Make sure you have a reputable antivirus software and that you're keeping it updated. Same thing with your Windows updates. Don't ignore the little pop-up like some of you may be able to see in my lower right-hand corner on my own computer. Don't ignore the updates. Give yourself time to let them run and to make sure that they ran. So good example of that might be on a lunch break. Make it a habit to say, do I need any updates? I've got an hour. Let's make sure they get done. The next one would be admin password for your wireless router at home and the Wi-Fi password. So those are two different things for anyone who's not aware. The admin password would be what you use to actually make changes on the router, and then the Wi-Fi is just password is what you use to get connected to the network and actually use the internet. A lot of times those are printed on the side of the router, and people will just leave them default because they look like complex passwords and they seem safe. Well, after you've had that for 5 years, for example, how many people have you given that Wi-Fi password out to? Did you throw a party and there's a couple people that you're not really familiar with who may have gotten the password? Again, all ways for devices that you don't want on your network to get connected. So it's always a good idea to change that on a pretty regular basis. Not as frequently as you might for other web page logins, 30, 60 days, but maybe once a quarter, twice a year. If you have any doubt, that's the best way to determine, if you're not sure if you should change it, just go ahead and change it. The more you do it, the easier it'll be. One last point on that, and I don't want to get too technical, is when you do log into the router, or maybe you have somebody who's a little more technical help you do that, they'll typically list out all of the devices that are actually connected and give a simple description. So it's a very easy way to read and go see. If you see 3 devices and you have a computer and 2 phones in the house, great, you're done. But if you see something on there that you're not sure of, you can try to go figure out what it might be. And of course, change the password to disconnect that device. So the last one I want to touch on is password management software. A lot of people who maybe haven't heard of it, or maybe kind of stuck in an older way of doing things, common thing is a big spreadsheet of passwords, or maybe notes in Outlook to store passwords. It's one unsecure, unencrypted place to store passwords that if someone finds that, everything is compromised. So we always recommend to use a password management software. There's lots of them out there. If you engage with us to help you with some of these things, we can tell you what will best fit your situation. But generally speaking, you're going to create one master password to log into the password manager, and then it's going to help you create and store passwords for every site that you need them for. So it's going to do 2 things. One, it will reduce the amount of times or eliminate repeating passwords because it will generate them for you. And 2, it will make it easier when it comes time to reset that password because it'll just fill it in for you. And That way you won't be tempted to skip or maybe keep the same password or maybe make a rotation coming back to the same password. Another thing I want to hit on this is multi-factor authentication. It is a very powerful tool that is considered a standard at this point. So what I mean when I'm talking about multi-factor authentication is there are at least two ways, or you're providing two methods of identification or authentication when you're logging into a service. Great example of that is a bank. So you've logged into the website and you've put in your username and password, then it will text you a code and you've got to put that code in. That's multi-factor authentication. So it's tried to reach you with two different paths. You've provided the correct information and now you can log in. Very powerful tool because, of course, if someone gets one set of credentials, but they don't have your cell phone or whatever the other method might be to provide that extra layer, they can't access it. In that same fashion, it also provides notification, because if you get a text to log into your Capital One account and you're not logging into your account, you know you have a problem, and you can instantly go and change that password and report that. All right. Any questions before we go on to the next section? See anything on the list there, Mel?
Everything looks good right now.
Okay. So next part, we've talked about the network, and the next thing we want to get onto are physical security basics. Again, this is one that not a lot of people are thinking about. Maybe they're thinking about it from the wrong angle, so to speak. Physical security would be, obviously, what's on your desk? Are you locked in the office? Those sorts of things. Before we get into the details there, if you think about it in generalities, if you leave your computer on and logged in at home, who has access to it? And we're not talking about, somebody breaks into your house and is going to access your computer and steal some files. It could be as simple as your 2-year-old reaches over and presses the delete button at the wrong time, or maybe wanders away from you and starts pressing buttons on the keyboard, deleting or altering files that you had just worked so hard on or needed to turn in. So it's not necessarily nefarious, but it does still affect the business. So that's kind of the mind frame or mindset I want to stay in. It doesn't have to be nefarious, but if it affects the business, it's something you need to worry about. The other side of that might be printing. So in the same fashion, there's not a whole lot of printing depending on the industry you're in, but accounting is a good example where you may be printing a decent bit of sensitive documents, and you just want to make sure that you've taken the same precautions you do when you were in the office, simply bringing a shredder home. Is there a way to do it without printing it? Maybe a good idea is getting a second monitor or even a third so that you don't have to print things and you can look at multiple spreadsheets. Whatever would help, it's just something you want to keep in top of mind to make sure that none of that information gets into the wrong hands.
So just to hop in here real quick, when it comes to printing, something to be mindful of is what printer are you printing to, especially if you're set up with a VPN or some sort of remote connection. You might be printing to the office by accident when you're not there. And then the cleaning lady can come around to the printer.
Yeah, that's a very good point. If you're not sitting in front of the printer, then it may just seem like an error and it didn't print. So you might try it again, not realizing you've printed to the wrong one. And worst case scenario, are you printing out an employee profile with social security numbers on it into, Joe, the new guy's office? You never know. So that's a very good point, something you want to be really careful of.
And then Herman from Mount Airy wants to know if he can use a burn barrel instead of a shredder.
Depending on Mount Airy's fire code, sure. You might just want to tell your neighbors. All right. So next topic I wanted to get into, and really one that we get the most questions on and spend a lot of time on, is email security. So I formed this a little differently. I don't have the whole list here in front of everyone, but I do have 5 or 6 things we want to hit on. We all know that spam email is a major problem, and every year they get trickier and trickier. So we wanted to tell you some of the things to look out for, but not only that, show you some live examples and walk you through things that we look for when we are identifying spam emails. Also things that your spam filtering service should be looking for. But these are just kind of an extra step to kind of get that intuition going, so that when you look at something, you have that better chance of saying, I'm not sure that's right. I'm just going to delete that or report it to IT or whatever the proper procedure is in your company. So first case would be emails asking for I'll use the industry term, personally identifiable information, are typically spam. As everyone should know, it's never a good idea to send social security numbers, credit card numbers, anything sensitive, names, birth dates, all of that in email, because it is not a secure communication. Somebody could access it in transit, someone could access it at the far end, or even from your computer where it's being sent. So it's never a good idea to send any personable, or I'm going to abbreviate it, PII, in an email. This email is a great example where it's very short and sweet. If you look at the email address and everything, you could say, all right, this looks like a real email. But the attachment at the bottom is requesting information, and that's the red flag there. Again, you never want to send that an email. So if you get an email asking you to do that, you should immediately red flag it. And by that, we mean don't open it, delete it, and then of course you can tell your IT department to go, maybe check that email out if you feel it's something they need to look at. One point I want to make about that is it's always a good idea to take a screenshot of the email and then send it. You don't want to actually forward the email, because you're basically doing the spammer's job for them. You're just sending it to another person who might accidentally click on it. So always a good idea to just screenshot that instead of sending the whole thing. All right. So the second thing you want to look for, do you recognize the sender? Does the email address make sense? So if you look at the bottom of this, the hotel.com body of the email, it looks completely genuine. In fact, it may be completely genuine, a straight copy from a viable email. And it says hotels.com at the top. However, if you actually read the address, you'll see hotels.com at whatever that domain is, roktpowered.com. That's your first red flag. You should always have the name that you're used to on the domain side. So to keep it simple, the right side of the ad. So it should say maybe marketing at hotels.com. Because it doesn't match, we know that this is a spam email and it should be deleted. And this is something that you can typically check without actually fully opening the email, just looking at the reading pane and looking for that. Plenty of other examples of that, but to summarize that, the domain, so the right side of the email address, should match exactly what you expect it to say. And always a good idea to use an abundance of caution. If you're not sure, just delete it. If it's from if you think it's from somebody, you can always delete that first email and then check with the person you think it's from, just to be sure. Another big sign is logos. So you may get an email that looks completely correct, but the logo is a little off. And that typically happens with retail. Not something that you're going to know for every single email that comes in. Nobody can, memorize logos, but it's a good idea to get at least a decent idea of those things that you deal with commonly. So maybe if you have Costco and you're getting deals emailed to you, Best Buy, Amazon, anything you use commonly, those are the ones you want to get a feel for what the logo looks like, so you can identify it when someone tries to, fake or spam an email under that company's name. All right, speaking of Best Buy, here's another example. So this is kind of in the same category. If the logo isn't right, that's one thing, one red flag you want to look at. Last one would be in the same category would be the typos. So is it written correctly? You know, is it in proper English or whatever language it should be in? Is it grammatically correct? If you take a look at this example in the last sentence here, we will pay your money back less 17 because your order was reserved. You know, not proper grammar. There should be a $sign in there and cents. So anything like that is usually a red flag. Sometimes they're easier to spot than others, but something you want to keep an eye out for. You can also see at the top here, again, just like the hotels.com email, it's the wrong domain. You know, nobody who's sending a real email from Best Buy is going to say at fashionlab.com.ua. So that's the big red flag to look out for. Next one is attachment type. There's a couple things wrong with this email, but the big one is the file type should match what you're expecting. So please find an attached bank slip is what this email says. You would expect maybe a doc file for a Word document, or more likely a PDF. It's neither of those in this case, and it's a zip file. That is your first red flag. So if it doesn't match what you're expecting, and again, you don't have to know all of them. We just want you to keep an eye out, and if you're not sure, you can make the right choice and delete the email. The other red flag in here, aside from how simple it is the bank wire transfer department at gmail.com. No bank would actually use Gmail for real transactions or information. So that's your other thing to look for in that email. All right. Last one we want to cover is probably the most difficult to get yourself trained to look for, but it's a very powerful one and one you definitely want to keep an eye out for. So a lot of times emails will get sent where you maybe won't catch the email address being wrong or the body of the email looks correct, but if you click on the link, you're sent somewhere you didn't expect, possibly downloading a virus. You know, the possibilities are endless there. But one thing that is a really powerful tool is in any browser or email program, if you hover over a link, so in this example, this big green button, at the bottom of the screen, it will show you the web page it's going to send you to. Typically, they're going to be very long and lengthy and have a lot of extra digits and numbers in there, but you don't have to worry about that part. You just need to focus on the beginning. And there's two things. First off, you want to make sure it says HTTPS, because any site that's going to be dealing with your information, any reputable site, will use a secure, what's called SSL or TLS for the web page. That means it's encrypted. Good example of that is your bank account. You always see HTTPS on the web browser, and it has the little green lock to tell you that everything is secure. The fact that we don't see that on this one, and yet it's asking us to deal with account information, is a big red flag. The other one, of course, is that it doesn't say Netflix.com or whatever their address is. It's something totally different, and it has nothing to do with Netflix. That's what we want you to look out for. Just in the very beginning of the URL, or the web page, so to speak, you want to make sure that you see the name of the company or a domain that you recognize. If you, again, have any doubt, don't click on it, delete the email. And sometimes it's always worth a second or third glance, because if we look at this Amazon example that we found, it's HTTPS and it's Amazon.com almost. It's got an extra N in there, and the website is set up to collect information. So if you were to put your information in here and log in, I don't know what it would do afterwards, but they would have your Amazon account information and could immediately start buying stuff using your account. It's that easy. You know, it would take 10 seconds. So always if you're not sure, take a second look at that, and after a while, you'll start to get a feel for things that show up where they shouldn't be, domains that you should recognize, and it'll become a little easier to delineate the two. Any questions on that, or things that we want to go back over and cover, or that weren't clear?
I just want to make sure we highlight on the fact that you can mouse over a link and get a preview of where it's sending you, so it gives you a good chance to check.
Want me to bring up a live example?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, let's see, go find a good one here. Okay, here's one of our vendors, just a marketing email that was sent to us. So we'll download everything so we can see the company name, Avatrix, and we've got this register now, so it's a webinar. And if I hover over this, we can see, and I apologize for the small text if everyone can't see it, but it's https pages.avatrix.com. So there's a whole lot more in there, but I can tell by just reading the first part, it matches what I'm expecting to see. So I would be okay clicking on that email. I also know this is a vendor in the industry, so I'm familiar with it. So all those things in combination, are things you want to combine, and you'll get a feel for what's coming in, what's out of the ordinary. Maybe a company you don't recognize. Here's another one. Now this one shows manageengine.com. This link down here seems to be for their marketing, and it says mail list-manage.com, but again, I don't recognize it, so I would never click on it. I might click on this one here because I recognize the domain, but I usually will not click on these and just wait for a direct invitation to a webinar too, just to be on the safe side. So you think that kind of covers it there, Mel? Make it a little clearer?
Yep.
Okay. Good. One other thing we should talk about when we talked about dealing with emails, if I identified a email here and said, okay, well, I think this is spam, we of course can go down here. I've right-clicked and go down to junk and hit block sender. Or if it's somebody that has been marked as spam and it's not, you can come down here and hit never block sender. Now, this is just for your Outlook program. So your company may have another spam filter or additional services that need to be made aware if something is not spam. Lots of different versions out there, but typically they'll send you a summary email each day, which you can browse through and tell the program whether it is a safe or spam email. Right.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So actually, before I sign off, any last questions? I don't see any there on the list.
Nothing for that now.
Okay. So it says, yeah, got to do my little flourish with the with the curtains there. So just in summary, these are all things that we can help you out with, whether they're on your company network or training your users at home, or even with your home PCs and networks. We can help you identify, a password manager that you'll need to use, a proper procedure for your company, whether your employees are at home or in the office, help you make sure that you've got a decent antivirus solution, network security, etc. So those are all things that Context Systems can help you with. For those who are participated in the webinar today, we're going to offer a free hour consultation over the phone on your particular network to answer any detailed questions you have, or maybe review your current setup and talk about things that we could do to improve the network security in your office and at home. So with that, we'll see you on the next webinar. Thanks again for your help, Mel.
No problem.
Talk to you all soon.